Welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is the first webinar of the 2026 CSE Development in Action webinar series. So pumped to launch this year's webinar series with our first webinar by our speaker, Dr. Felly M Tusiime. And today's webinar is on restoring Uganda's fragile ecosystems, a multi-stakeholder impact model, and Felly will be explaining to us her work, her extensive work in Uganda in restoring ecosystems, natural habitats, and wetlands, and it is a very interesting webinar presentation. So please do participate and engage in today's conversation. A brief introduction by our speaker today. So, Dr. Felly Tusiime is the National Project Coordinator for the SACRiAC project, which I will let her introduce you to the project. This project is at the Ministry of Water and Environment, and Dr. Felly brings around 20 years of experience as a leading climate change and environment specialist. Her work is widely recognized as a climate change specialist, especially in the integrated landscape restoration area. And she combines technical environmental data with community-led conservation strategies, which she will be explaining today. Dr. Tusiime holds a PhD in environmental management at the Makerere University and at University of Oslo. And I'm pleased to inform you that she is a Commonwealth Scholar, a Commonwealth Professional Fellow from Uganda, and she completed her fellowship at Lancaster University. So over to you, Dr. Felly, and I hope you can talk a little more about your background and your role and your work, and of course the project that you are presenting on today as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Eva, and thank you to the Commonwealth scholars and alumni who are on the webinar. You're welcome. Thank you for making time for this webinar. So I've been introduced very well, and also in writing on the posts on the internet. My background is botany and zoology, and I mastered in plant taxonomy and worked in a very interesting ecosystem, Bwindi Impenetrable National Park. It is one of our favorite destinations in Uganda because of its rich biodiversity, and most importantly, because of hosting the world's most important species, the mountain gorillas. We host more than 50% of the world population in that forest, but I was working on plants there. And so other than that, I've done research in different ecosystems, grasslands, wetlands, forests, and some very interesting ecosystems like Afro-alpine ecosystem. This is the highest parts of mountains, the tallest mountains in Africa. I was able to sample and study the genetics and evolution of very unique plants there, telling their story of evolution across the 12 tallest mountains in Africa. And so down, it's where I've worked with wetlands, and I can't talk about every part of my work in just this presentation. I will focus on the current project, which is the SACRiAC project, the acronym that is SACRiAC. We pronounce that SACRiAC, and it's strengthening adaptive capacity and resilience of communities in Uganda's watersheds. And this particular project is in the Awoja catchment, and it is here where I'll focus most of my presentation, sharing what is happening here. But again, most of the trends here are not very different from what is happening in some parts of the country. So if I get questions on clarification, I'll try as much as possible to share a bigger picture if the question calls for more information than just the Mount Elgon or Awoja catchment system. So in my presentation, before I even go to my presentation, I will introduce myself, and then this is part of the introduction, but I can't forget to introduce myself also, even if already introduced as a Commonwealth professional fellow. And I'll talk a little more about that in relation to how the Commonwealth relates to this work specifically for this presentation. I'll talk about the agents of restoration in the eastern part of the country, and specifically in the Mount Elgon region ecosystem. And then I'll talk about how we are coming to mitigate the challenges already there and the approach, how we're engaging the different stakeholders across different sectors and different institutions to solve this common challenge. And then I will share some of the lessons that we've learned so far that we feel can be scaled outside. And of course, towards the end of this presentation, we shall have the Q&A session where we could learn more about the presentation. So yes, here I am at Lancaster. I was hosted at the Lancaster Environment Center. And what I can say is it is one of the best experiences of my career life, because I was equipped with beyond the science. I was able to appreciate the power of partnership, the impacts that are realized when you bring multiple stakeholders of diverse expertise and even across the relevant institutions working together on a common challenge. And so from the Lancaster Environment Center community, or the wider Lancaster University community and partners, beyond the science, I was able to see that, there is something I have not done in school, which is the how to approach, especially when it comes to socioeconomic elements, sociology, working with people. So I was able to get this, co-designing, co-implementing, that power of working together. And so the examples were diverse from different experiences, but in my work, I've tried to domesticate them to fit the situation. Like I've said before, you can tell that the work we have been doing over the years covers climate change resilience, sustainable land management, biodiversity research, and capacity building. These I hadn't mentioned before. So I've led projects supporting capacity building for greenhouse gas inventories, and I'm happy to inform you that the current greenhouse gas inventory for Uganda was supported by one of the projects that I led. And so our national reporting to the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is based on that. And that's another presentation. There's so much to share about that. But for now, I will just stop there. And we have also been promoting in my work nature-based solutions, because they are sustainable for the environment and also for communities. So direct into the presentation. Here I present the Mount Elgon ecosystem area. Mount Elgon is in this corner of the east, and Mount Elgon is shared with Kenya, our neighbor. It's a vital ecosystem hosting unique biodiversity. It's the world's largest caldera and a big attraction to tourism. It is the second tallest mountain in the country, and also a major water tower for both Uganda and Kenya. But this ecosystem is facing a lot of climate hazards because of the nature of its ecology. The ecosystem is very rich in terms of the soil, and the population in Uganda is very high. And so because of this, there's a lot of pressure on the use of the land. So you find that we've had a lot of degradation because of the pressure from the big population, and these ones has impacted on has resulted in climate hazards. Every wet season in the upper parts of the hills, we have landslides, mudslides, many times losing livelihoods and also sometimes lives. And then downstream, we have floods, and the floods are also causing the same havoc, loss of life, loss of property and livelihoods, making infrastructure development very expensive, like road construction and things like that. But because of, the degradation. So there's nothing protecting nature as was before, because the ecosystems have been kind of heavily degraded. So farming is one of the major causes of degradation. And like I've said, we are having similar trends in other parts of the country, because Uganda is losing like an average of 2,000 hectares of natural forest annually. That is really alarming, but that is on a whole of Uganda. If I could use an example, like in 1990, Uganda forest cover was about 24%. And to date, as in the latest inventory, are covering 12.6%, which is an improvement, because a few years earlier, we were at less than 12%. So the trend is changing a little because of a lot of interventions in restoration. And then for the wetlands, in 1995, we were at 15%. And to date, it's at 9.3%, as in per last year, 2025 inventory. So the map here, I'm showing when it was still green, but things have changed a bit. Not a bit, actually, quite a lot. However, we are trying to reverse the trend through these efforts of restoration. Again, for this presentation, I'll focus in the Mount Elgon and Aweja catchment areas. So just to understand, I've picked one of the restoration sites that we're working on, Namatale Central Forest Reserve. It's the only Central Forest Reserve in the region, in the eastern part of the region. And it is, at the moment, quite severely degraded. I show the trend here. You could tell from the visual colors. In 1995, 1990, it was green and beautiful. And then things kept changing. And this is mainly because of crop and encroachment for habitation and other land uses. At the moment, there's a lot of yellow, meaning we have lost a lot of the forest. So literally for this forest, by 2023, when this project hadn't begun, we had lost 77% of the forest. And you can see when we started, what you see in the picture are the gardens. So instead of trees standing, they were gardens. And what was a bit like tough for us to watch, there would have never been much chance of natural restoration, because even the stumps had been uprooted for charcoal burning. So like, and the frequent farming was kind of like not allowing even the seed to be able to naturally regenerate. It was very severe degradation. So that was about an example of the forest where we are working. We have a similar trend with the wetlands. We have 3 wetland sites that we're working on, and I show the trend of the 3 wetland sites from 1995 to date, 2025, if I could use this, because this year has just begun. So you will notice that the first wetland, which is Muyembe on the extreme left, Simu Muyembe, it's in Bulambuli district. The green is when there was less, it was intact. And then the orange, or some people's eyes may see red, that's when it's getting degraded. So we have had land cover change from the natural. Like Muyembe, even by 1995, it was really a bit actually very degraded. But when you compare the next set of wetland, Nalugugu had a lot of green in 1995. To date, we have 100% degradation. All of it is gone. And this is in Sironko district. And then Comiria also had a lot of green. But to date, most of it is gone. And so these ones are mainly turned into farmland. So like you can see, 100% of Nalugugu is currently totally degraded, and 86% of Simumuyembe, and Comiria, it is 93%. So there's a lot of degradation. For purposes of people who want to know what is wetland degradation, I will play a short video here. So this should have been papyrus and other wetland plants. But this is an example of what is happening in Simumuyembe wetland. You can see maize, the one which is a bit brownish. And then we have a lot of rice growing here. And it's a very big challenge. And these same wetlands are, because of the heavy degradation, the natural flood mitigation services have been compromised. So these areas usually suffer from floods during the rainy season. So I can move to the next. So with all these challenges, government of Uganda was able to secure funding from the Global Environment Facility through the African Development Bank, and to implement this project, which is strengthening adaptive capacity and resilience of communities in Uganda's watersheds in the Awoja catchment, which we are calling SACRiAC project. I have a link to a bit of more details about the project. And then I've already mentioned the project area. So we have 4 districts in Uganda where we are working: Sironko, Bulambuli, Kapchorwa, and Bukedya. And then we've come to do restoration. The targets are quite ambitious. And so we are targeting about 4,449 hectares of the wetland, as in those 3 wetlands that I just shared. And then for the forests, we are doing restoration on parts of Mount Elgon National Park, the ones which were degraded, and the entire Namatali Central Forest Reserve. So we are also doing riverbank restoration on River Sironko, and promoting climate smart agriculture on farm. And of course, with the motivation of supporting livelihoods. And how we are doing this, again, like I've mentioned before, I realized from my exposure and experience at Lancaster University, there is power in collaboration with multiple stakeholders. So we've come together with diverse stakeholders as Ministry of Water and Environment, like I've mentioned already, the source of our funding, and we have onboarded different ministries, departments, and agencies within government. We've onboarded private sector at national and the local level. We've also onboarded cultural and religious institutions, because we know when these people talk, the communities listen. And then we've also so much emphasized working with the communities, the farmers, because this is their project, this is their land. And so getting them on board at all levels is very important. So here, it's a graphical presentation of the approach. We have 3 major areas of restoration: the forest, the wetlands, and the farmland. And we, like I've mentioned earlier, working with the public sector, that is government, the private sector, the local communities, the religious and cultural leaders, and the technocrats. So here, and there are different ways how we are working. how we acquired the land, you'll notice when I'm sharing the examples, it came from different sources, the land for restoration. How we are doing the awareness creation, the capacity building, and sensitization about this work. We are also working with different stakeholders, how we are doing the procurement of the goods and services for the interventions, to support the interventions, and also our sustainability strategy. We are working with all these different multi-stakeholders across the different institutions and sectors. For example, the land. We have different lands for restoration. We have farmland, we have forest, we have wetland. So for the forest, we went to the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, that is the host of the national park, the Mount Elgon National Park, and under the custody of Uganda Wildlife Authority. So we presented our case that we wanted to restore degraded ecosystems. And we requested them to map for us adjacent areas in our project districts, and they were able to give us a total of 2,124 hectares of land to restore. And then we were able to also go to the National Forest Authority for the same, and they were able to allocate us 220 hectares. And so we onboarded these institutions at that national level and the regional level to start work. And then for acquisition of wetland land, although these wetlands from the image you saw, the video you saw, are totally currently owned by the communities because they are occupied by the communities, but these resources belong to the public. So, and this is under the mandate of the Wetland Management Department. So and this Wetland Management Department is one of our departments under the Ministry of Water and Environment. So they were able to map for us the degraded hotspots so that we start our journey of working with these communities to bring this wetland back. And the approach, how are we making sure that people understand what we are doing and that we're not doing it for any other reason but for the good of the people and the environment? We have worked with multiple media, radio, television, working with print and posters. And for this, we also work with the local languages. Even our posters, we have the official language, English, but we also have the local languages, and not only local languages, but even the dialects, because there's variation in some areas like Bugishu. Different parts of Gishu have different dialects. So we now worked with even the interpreters who are the experts of the local languages to help us with this. We've used music, dance, and drama, working with the local community drama groups, and also hosting community sensitization engagements. And in our engagements, again, we keep the multi-stakeholder approach. Like in the radio, we have technocrats, the experts of the subject area. We have like the cultural leaders, then we also have the local district leadership, the community leadership, depending on the topic, so that when people hear the voice of their people, they kind of connect. We've also used signposts for visual messages that we plant in our different restoration areas, so that even when we are not there, the messages are speaking. And we translate the key message in the local dialect of that area where the signposts are. So, and also, of course, naturally, including a bit of social media here and there. And then we also notice that when sometimes we agree on things and top management are not aware of the details at community engagement, it becomes difficult to integrate in the national plans and support, like at budgeting and things like that. So we've so much made sure that whenever possible, especially like on major events like celebrating environment days, wetland days, or launching like an activity, we invite government top management. From the pictures, I have selected a few examples. The first photograph in the extreme left, we have the Minister of State for Environment and the Prime Minister of the government of Uganda coming to join the World Environment Day in Sironko district and demonstrating on tree planting. And then we also, in the middle photo, we have our permanent secretary, Minister of Water and Environment. He's the chair of the project steering committee. So he frequently comes to the field to interact with the communities and interact with us on getting this work progressing. And in a very special way, we had, in this photo, we had the king, His Royal Highness, the Mkuka. Mkuka means king of Bamasawa Kingdom, which is the Bugisu Kingdom in the eastern region. Here he's planting a very special tree, Macamia lutea, that is the botanical name, but it is very significant for circumcision, which is a very unique practice here, male circumcision, and also important for many other cultural things, demonstrating that, we need these trees to sustain our culture and heritage. So other than this, His Royal Highness also has interacted with us on several occasions. So we are also working with the different clan leaders and other government officials, not only in Bugisu, but also in Sebei, which is Kapchorwa, and Teso sub-region, which cover the project areas. So I'll give an example of how we are working together using in the procurement process. For example, when we are procuring supply of seedlings or goods, we do a needs assessment. And this is where the technical experts, I'll use an example like we have the Agriculture Research Institute, and in the region it's Buginyanya Zadi, Zona Agriculture Research Institute, coming to guide us on which crops or tree plants are ecologically feasible for the region or the sub-region. And then we have Uganda Wildlife Authority and National Forest Authority guiding us on which species used to exist in these forests, meaning if it's a restoration intervention, we have to bring back the forest, meaning we have to work with the trees which naturally grow there. So once we have the technical knowledge, and even like other than the protected areas, for the farmland, we were able to get the needs assessment of which trees, the crop trees or the fruit, or the multi-purpose trees, which are most feasible for the region. After we have this, then we go back to the communities and find out which ones are some of the most useful for the community so that they promote them, especially the farmland trees. Why? This area I've already mentioned is limited with land. So if you're going to bring, especially indigenous trees, you want to bring what they really treasure most, but also encourage more trees on farm through agroforestry, and you explain to them the beauty of having multi-purpose trees. And the message is if it contributes to their livelihood income. So, and then after we know which one are the most relevant, and this is not only for the plants and seed, but also for other livelihood goods, for example, for beekeeping, fish farming, and other interventions that we are bringing on board, we always do needs assessment. So like we are planning with the communities on what is relevant for them. And then after getting on board the suppliers or the contractors, we make sure that they are not coming with their stuff from wherever they've come from. And we have done all procurements locally so that we encourage the locals, as in local, I mean Ugandan suppliers. And then we encourage the locals because most of these challenges and solutions are local solutions. But for implementation, we even encourage them to work with the communities, not to get workers from other places. You work with the communities to foster ownership and stewardship for sustainability. So you can see here in the photos, meanwhile, the first photo, we are standing in the middle of Mount Elgon National Park. That part which was heavily degraded. We look like we're in a playground, but yes, that's how terrible the situation was. And here we are discussing with the different seedlings companies that we want to work with the communities. And the last photo on the extreme right, we have, you can see it's a big number of people who are working. And on top, some of those workers, you can see this group is of women. So I will talk about women engagement later. So a key question is, how do you ensure that what we are doing stays post the project implementation period? Our approaches is to work with existing structures, build capacity to make sure that by the time we leave, these things can be rolled over in normal operations. For example, we supported mainstreaming climate resilience in each of the district development plans. We worked with different government level officers, the district, the sub-counties, and got input from multiple stakeholders who are decision makers to identify climate resilience approaches and ensure that the district plans for them. So we have these district development plans, which are now rolled. I mean, they're being implemented, they will be implemented. And this one, the district local government belong to a different ministry. It's not even Ministry of Water and Environment. This is Ministry of Local Government. What is most interesting is today in government of Uganda, there is an incentive budget tagging to climate and gender mainstreaming. So like if your budget for your activities do not have climate action or gender action, then they are not priority for funding. So it's kind of like gives the district a better opportunity to lobby for funding. And at least we've gotten quite a lot of appreciation from the Ministry of Local Government for this support. So whether the project is there or not, at least we have this mainstreamed and we hope this can be sustained. And then we have supported development of 10 climate resilience action plans in different catchments and subcatchments in this region. We've talked about the region which is in Awoja catchment. So we have developed a subcatchment and a micro catchment plans. And these ones, we develop them with the communities. As in, you're bringing the technical expertise. And again, we worked here with a different department. For the previous climate resilience, we worked with the climate change department from the Ministry of Water and Environment, of course, with the district local government, and there are different levels of structures. And then for the climate resilience action plan, we are working with the Kyoga Water Management Zone, which is an institutional structure under the Ministry of Water and Environment in charge of catchment management. So we worked with these ones, bringing in the technocrat knowledge and then working with the communities. And again, you can't do this without the Ministry of Local Government. So we worked with the districts, and this will be launched next week. Okay, next month, sorry. The month is starting next week. But during the Water and Environment Week, we shall have these plans launched. We developed 3 community wetland management plans. You can tell from the name of the plan, they are developed with the communities. So from down upwards, and then these ones are also mainstreamed in the operations. And here we worked with the technical expertise of the Department of Wetland Management, which is under the Ministry of Water and Environment. So you can see we are bringing on board wherever the knowledge is, we bring them on board to make life easier for us to share the best practices with the communities. Then we bring on board the communities and we are able to execute. So we have also built capacity, establishing wetland user committees, catchment management committees, collaborative forest management groups, and these are local community leaders chosen by the local communities to manage implementation of these plans and ensure that what we have planned to do with the communities is feasible. So here you can see we are engaging, building capacity at different levels, in rooms and even in the field, so that everyone knows what we are up to. So another thing that we thought of is we know the challenge is mainly because of such for survival. People don't destroy the environment because they hate nature, but they are limited with options, and this is one of the biggest challenge here. But we have put in place some starting structures to address the livelihood option. We started with the water and environment cooperatives. So these are cooperatives we established with the communities. And these cooperatives, you see the naming of water and environment, we have tagged them to restoration and environment management. And to do this, we have worked with yet another ministry, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperative. So we brought them on board and to support us to establish this, because it's that ministry mandated to register cooperatives, but also to sensitize the communities. And on board here, because we have to work with communities, yes, but we also have to work with the district structures, and then we have the commercial officers in the district. So we were working with this. So the district is in another ministry, Ministry of Local Government, but it was very interesting how we can get the different ministries coming together, different departments and the communities, all addressing whichever need we're up to. And so we have a total of around 18 cooperatives formed, and they are they are fully registered, and they have even opened accounts. So we are able to attract the interest from Uganda Finance Bank, Uganda Finance Trust Bank, and they have opened accounts and they are free of charge. Like they're not charging any they are not incurring any putting any charges on these accounts, just to support us and the communities. We are promoting livelihoods. We've done a number of things to support livelihood. We've supplied high-value seedlings and seed. We've also procuring multiple livelihood services, like training on aquaculture, which is fish farming, training on beekeeping, and other training like craft making, so that we have other option other than depending on the wetlands or the forest exclusively. So we also have some seed money. It's little, but we want to start, because we believe once we have something, it is easier to attract further support compared to just finding people not structured, not organized, and they want help. And then we also have government interventions, a number of them, EMIOGA, Operation Wealth Creation. There's a lot of government interventions, but they want people grouped together. So we are hoping that these groups can easily attract that kind of support from diverse partners who are willing to support these kind of interventions. The progress, we have advanced, still baby steps, but like for forest restoration, we started in April 2024, and to date, we are at around 77% of our progress. And you can see from here, I will show just an example of Namatale. This is a drone video. I'll just play it for a short while just to show you. You know, before, most of it was like you can see from the background where we had gardens. But you can see one of our challenge is we still have some people digging in parts of this forest reserve. And we are not kind of forcing people out. For now, the project came to try as much as possible to have people voluntarily living, so that we are sure they can easily sustain what we are doing. And the same people are planting with us, and we give them the power to collaboratively manage these restored areas with the host mandated institutions like Uganda Wildlife Authority or the Forest Authority. And so far, that's the approach. So you can see in the foreground is where, like, we started from. So most of it is beginning to green. At first, it was mostly like patchy brown, but at the moment, it's quite impressive. Although the trees are still very young, and some of them are about like 2 meters, 3 meters, some, and then others are still we are still planting, even this season we are planting, but there is hope, and it's exciting to see the forest coming back. And then for the wetland, we started with planning with the communities on how do we manage the wetlands. And then last year in April, we launched a wetland management plan for each of our 3 wetlands. And these were also presented to the Wetland Convention, the Conference of Parties, the 15th Conference of Parties, the Ramsar Convention, which was really nice. And so this is how we are also sharing our knowledge outside Uganda. And these are available online to see the details. They are very simple. They are costed by the communities. It's amazing to see how much the communities know the value of this. They know the value. They were the ones mentioning the values, and even together we costed how much it costs to lose them. So even how much it will cost to bring them back, everything is in there, and these are available for all those who wish to look at them. So like I mentioned earlier, we have committees who are established to help with overseeing implementation of these plans. And we have so far demarcated 149 kilometers. That is, we need to let people know. Some people don't even know where the wetland passes because most of it are now gardens. And then shortly after, we will try to do the multiple approaches to wetland restoration. And other than the wetlands, as in the swamps, we also are demarcating River Sironko, and so that we can be able to restore that major river in the Sironko, which cuts across most of the project area. We've supported a lot of seed and seedlings, like I mentioned earlier, to decide which seedlings we were to distribute in the region. We did a technical needs assessment for feasibility, but we also went with our menu and found out which ones are the popular options. And then we supplied what people wanted most. Why? Because we want them not to just receive, but to plant them on their land and also grow them, because they should be attached to them. So, of course, like I've mentioned, some of the things that are kind of popular, but we have lists of what we supplied. But other than this, we also supplied short-term crops, some beans, peas, and just for the short term. And one of the most popular was Napier, because these places don't have land yet. They are zero grazing. They are limited with the fodder. So they really liked the Napier grass, and they can grow it along the edges of their garden. So it serves multiple uses. It's fodder, but also manages soil. So we included everyone in our approach of implementing this project. We look out especially for people who could easily be left out. We emphasize inclusion of the youth, the women, people with disability, the elderly. So we are very intentional in promoting awareness, especially when we have activities where these people can participate or can benefit. So, and this one is to help everyone to feel part of the interventions, and at different levels. And even at management, we insist we should have a youth representative, a woman representative, and strongly encourage even people with disability, where they are able to participate, to come on board. In leadership, it's amazing to find when some of the top leaders are actually in these categories. So some of our partners, we did not intentionally reach out to them, but because they've heard about what we are doing, they have come to support us. For example, the media houses to come and tell our story. It's quite good. We are happy about this because our story is out there by different individuals writing articles, but also by the major media houses. I have just shared a little bit of what we are doing here. And as government, specifically Ministry of Water and Environment, we have a mandate to inform policy decision, and this work is integrated in some of the policies and plans like I've already mentioned about the climate resilient action plans, which are now at the catchment level. I've mentioned the district development plan. Here we are supporting another ministry to mainstream climate resilience, that is the Ministry of Local Government. We've talked about the community wetland management plans, which we have developed. Most interestingly, recently, at the beginning of this month, we had the World Wetland Day, and Uganda launched the National Wetland Strategic Plan 2026-2036. And we, as a project, are very excited to have a lot of our project interventions captured in this strategic plan. And yeah, so we are happy about this, and we are really hoping, like at high level, we will be able to see some of these actions supported post the project period. So our work is contributing to targets of the National Development Plan. We have the 4th Uganda NDP and the Vision 2040. And of course, we are implementing a lot of adaptation and mitigation action of the national determined contributions for Uganda, our commitments to reduce emissions and climate change. And then, of course, we are contributing majorly. This is a climate change project, so to the SDG 13. And you can see we are doing a lot of life on land, so 15. And the partnership is our magic approach. And of course, all these ones will feed into SDG 1 and SDG 2, so that we hope there will be reduction on poverty and food insecurity. So we have some challenges. Other than the physical challenges, we are working in very fragile ecosystem. Sometimes we are in the field, and as soon as we come downstream, where we have been, a landslide happens, people have died, and you're like, oh, okay, we could have been there. And sometimes access is very difficult, but we are working there. But that's not the big problem, because as experts, we are used to some of these things, as in it's expected. But some of these are like from our beneficiaries, the expectations. The communities are relying on these ecosystems. So when you tell them we are going to restore, then the worry sets in. They are worried of what next, and then they expect like compensation. And like I've mentioned, we are doing livelihood. But when you compare the magnitude of the need versus the current project resources, there is a bit of limitation, but nonetheless, we are starting. And we think that after starting, it is easy to demonstrate the need and attract further support from government, but also from other non-government partners. And then we have the mindset challenge. Most of our communities feel these resources belong to the public. Of course, yes, they do. And then they have the rights to use them the way they want, especially now that they are limited. So we are slowly but surely getting communities to appreciate that you can actually wisely use these resources, so that the resources are able to survive in this generation and the future generation, but also you are able to survive today and tomorrow. It's a continuous process, but it's something which is one we can call one of our challenges. And then some are kind of like seasonal issues. Sometimes we have fire in the dry season, and grazing. People set their animals free, and you find that, especially in the dry season when there is limited pastures, so you find that some of our trees are eaten or destroyed. But we have enhanced patrol in the protected areas, and we're working with, again, the institutions that we've set in place to help in protection. The project is a short project. The project is 4 years, and the interventions are supposed to be, ideally, restoration needs time. it's time, it's a process. But the strategy we've used is to work with structures which are already there. And so the hope is, even if the project didn't get an extension, for example, or didn't get a phase 2, the structures that we've worked with and mainstreamed the interventions in the routine obligations of the different structures, we are hoping that we can have some of the interventions ongoing. But again, we are proactively encouraging other partners who are interested to onboard and kind of like take off and implement some of these activities or kind of build on what we've done. And of course, naturally, we will try to continue fundraising to support further sustainability of these interventions. So what we've learned, I've mentioned it over and over, is to co-design. And why co-designing? So, for example, this project was developed. However, at implementation, we had to domesticate the interventions, go back with communities and see how you can bring it alive. So getting the indigenous knowledge into the science has been very important. And we think these ones is very important for sustainability. And don't just design, but implement with the communities and with the other institutions, so that at the end of it all, by the time the project exits, we already have the ownership and we can guarantee a certain level of stewardship because they feel they're part of the project. It's their project. And then, like I've already mentioned, we are doing a lot of working with government institutions at different levels, the district, the sub-county levels, but we're also working with the community institutions, cultural, religious institutions. And this one is mostly for buy-in and for sustainability, and also rolling over to other areas where we may not be able to reach during the project intervention period. And then we have also engaged the high level in the respective ministries, departments, and agencies, but also in the cultural institutions and the religious institutions to help to integrate these interventions in the plans and the programs so that they also feel part of the contribution to the interventions which have been started in the project area. So I would like to thank the Commonwealth Scholarship for the support of my fellowship, because the approach I received on how to make my work better is through this fellowship at Lancaster University. The power of partnership, the art of collaboration, those words and the approaches I received during my fellowship. So thank you so much, Lancaster Environment Center. And I also would like to thank my employer, Government of Uganda, and funder, the Global Environment Facility and African Development Bank. Thank you.
That was a brilliant presentation. You can see a lot of reactions and applaud on the screen. Thank you so much, Felly, and it was really great to hear about your work on this particular project, talking to the importance of stakeholder engagement, as well as I love all the interactions, the emojis and reactions coming through. Keep them coming, audience. Yeah, so thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. Thank you for talking through the importance of stakeholder engagement as well as the challenges that you face. I know there's been a question about the challenges faced while implementing this project. So I hope for the participant who has sent this question, I hope this has answered your question, but if not, do send a nudge in the chat box and I can raise your question again. Felly, I would like to start the Q&A session, but before that, just to note to the audience, I have shared the link to the project in the chat box, and I'm happy to send it again so you'll have it handy. And I've also sent the links to the TV and print media details that you shared earlier in one of the slides. Um, Great. So if we are ready, we can begin with the Q&A session. I'd like to thank everyone who have shared your questions, submitted questions in advance of the webinar through the registration form. What I'll do is I will start the Q&A session with some of those questions and then move to the questions in the chat box. So, Ferry, the first question for you is um, the degradation of Uganda's ecosystem is one of the governance challenges the country is facing. What strategies are you putting in place to ensure that the policy narrative is hinged more into the governance factor?
Yeah, thank you. So I think government of Uganda, I'm not a spokesperson on government for government, but I will say a bit of what I can say. Government is moving from policy to practice, and there is a lot of working with multiple partners. If I could use an example of how is there support for bringing some of the policies into practice, you find that the challenge which are faced by for example, degradation of the protected areas, then we have the Uganda Tourist Board doing a lot of promotion on bring the pearl back, and then things like greening Uganda. And so like you see, there's a lot of promotion. There is a lot of sensitizing the young people. We are now having beauty pageants with Miss Tourism Uganda, Miss Wildlife Uganda, Miss. So to talk to different generations that, you know what, we need our pearl back. Uganda is the pearl of Africa, and we always like say we are gifted by nature, but the pearl is living. So unless we get the policies into practice, it becomes difficult. But now they're using different approaches, simple, easy to understand approaches, and delivering with the different stakeholders. I think this is what I can say for now.
Great, thank you. Moving to the next question on the list is how nature-based solutions can improve wastewater treatment systems in Uganda.
Yeah, thank you. I haven't talked much about nature-based solutions for this presentation, but we have, and I've done some work in Queen Elizabeth National Park in the Kilembe area, where we have used phytoremediation, working with plants which naturally suck toxins out of the water, the polluted water. Like there is a reed called Phragmites, I think it's the water reed, and Typha latifolia. These are botanical names, but they suck the toxins. So we have some parts or some projects which are employing phytoremediation. But since the Elgon region is not so much suffering from pollution as in chemical pollution, this presentation was silent. But in areas where we are having that challenge, some projects are employing phytoremediation. So that's an example of nature-based solutions. And for this particular area, the nature-based solution we're using, I mentioned thinly about restoration of River Sironko, the 97-kilometer riverbank. So here we are using bamboo. Bamboo is a plant which is very popular in the region. And so we are using it to stabilize the banks because the banks are fragile, they easily erode because of silting and a lot of water during the season, the rainy season. So we are using the bamboo to hold and stabilize the riverbanks and hope that the structures will be stronger to keep the river alive. I can use those examples for that, but details maybe in books.
Thank you so much for addressing the question. My next question. So there are a couple of questions about if it can be replicated basically in other regions of the country or across like other Commonwealth countries. So, um, for example, I'm looking at one of the questions in the chat box as well as in the list that we received in advance. Some of the challenges that you mentioned in Uganda are also observed in Kenya, for example. And some strategies have been developed to rehabilitate the degraded Mount Elgin region. Are there any opportunities for cross-border conservation strategies with Kenya, considering how porous borders can make it difficult to manage resource use within the national boundaries? And of course, if you can expand not just within Kenya, but like if this can be also replicated in other countries in the sub-Saharan region or like in other Commonwealth countries.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that submission. It's a question, but also like a proposal as a proposal for consideration. I think it would be great. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, Mount Elgon is shared. Is shared between two countries. So when it comes to the challenges, there is a very thin line that this is Uganda, this is Kenya. So having a kind of like multilateral approach to addressing these challenges is the best. And you can see the multi-stakeholder impact model, the impact model, unpacked is very simple. It's all about how do you identify the challenge and use the multiple stakeholders from the grassroots up to the highest level decision-making institutions to brainstorm and implement the solution. So I think it's very scalable and across the different challenges. Thank you.
Great. Sorry, thank you so much. I'm just going through the questions in the chat box. In your experience of working with communities, what alternative livelihoods did you provide for those whose farms got affected by this project?
So we are looking at short term and long term, and again to support the ecosystem to recover and also support livelihoods to be stable. So we have supplied trees, but we are also aware that the trees will take some time, like coffee will take an average of like 3 years to start fruiting. But then we're able to supply the short-term crops, seed, like peas, beans, maize, and napier. We hadn't thought of napier much. Napier is a grass. It's called elephant grass, but now it's like there are a lot of modified, improved varieties. So one of the needs that came so strongly, like you're like, do we bring more seedlings that bring napier? Do we bring napier? There was a lot of bring napier. So we're like, oh, these people really like this grass. So we are very happy to give the grass. But what is the magic with the grass? These people don't have land. Most of the families, a big percentage of the families have zero grazing. They have cows which were supplied by previous projects, but they don't have feed for the cow. And the zero grazed cows is a big livelihood support to the households because they're selling milk, but they don't have feed. And they are relying on the forest to harvest, but they are limited on access of the forest because these are protected parks or reserve. So they were happy to grow the napier because it's fast growing. In a month, they are able to start harvesting. And what is very, very interesting, other than feeding the animals to give them more milk, the grass is sold. A bale of grass is costing about $2. $2. So $2, someone can harvest a lot and be able to get, before even like feeding it to the cow to give them the milk. So even those who don't have the cow, they're able to sell the grass and they get money. So we worked with what they wanted for the short term and the long term. We are also supporting nature-based options like beekeeping, like fish farming. And at the moment, we are also trying to interest people in considering ecotourism. It has worked in some other parts of Uganda, as in with the real examples. So another thing we are doing is to take these leaders to the places where things have happened. If I can use Bwindi, Bwindi was able to recover the gorillas, the population of gorillas. And it's because the communities now protect those gorillas. If you harm a gorilla, before the Uganda Wildlife Authority ranger will find you, the communities will have handled the situation because they know the value of a gorilla. When tourists come to Windy, there is a lot of money from feeding the tourists, from selling souvenirs to the tourists. So they value the tourism. And another similar, other than the forest, the wetland, we have another flagship example where a forest has a wetland has completely turned into an ecotourism hub, which is Mabamba wetland in central Uganda here. That wetland is interesting a lot of tourism, and so the communities are very happy to keep the wetland in its natural state yet and. So we are trying to think of this as well, work with partners and keep these ecosystems profitable in their natural state.
And you mentioned about like different plants and grass. What about algae? That's one of the questions that's come up in the chat box. What about algae?
Algae, we haven't used algae because like I mentioned, most of our interventions are evidence-based from the needs assessment. So we, other than the technical knowledge, would also go and find out what is feasible for the communities. So we are working with the indigenous knowledge so that people can embrace what we are bringing. So we haven't worked with algae in this project.
Great. I am a bit concerned about time. So maybe I'll take one more question and then we'll move towards the post-webinar networking session. We could touch upon some of the questions in that segment. So the participant has said that they want to congratulate you on the well-designed project. You have achieved what many struggle with, which is getting political will. Um, can you perhaps give advice to those starting out on various projects on how to secure government involvement from the get-go, and get their projects seen by decision makers? And can you quickly also talk about the challenges that you faced in getting political will and how you have overcome them?
Thank you. And like I mentioned at one point, sometimes the decision makers don't know what is on the ground. So the best is always to have the evidence base, and then engage them, seek audience with them, and try as much as possible, attract them on site. So this is how we've done it. And at first, I can use two examples. When we went to the Uganda Wildlife Authority to ask for land, I requested to be invited in the senior management meeting. And it was a bit like, I think it's not common for someone outside the ministry to want to be part of the management meeting, but the executive director offered me a slot. And when I was in there, I got the opportunity of explaining. And although I was also informed of the challenges and a bit of, they were not so sure if we can handle, I requested that we try. Give us a chance to try. And then I also requested, please give us permission to work on that degraded land with your people. So top management gave us the green lights. But it's because we made physical, present. There's a lot of approaches using the press, advocacy, and sometimes, like a bit of riots and what. Yeah, are they working? How about getting to them and presenting? So I think it has worked when we have this human face-to-face, and then they give you a chance, and then frequently report, give updates. And most importantly, show the relevance to their interests. Like you'll notice, if it's a national park, it's their mandate to protect the park. And then we're like, it's degraded, but we want to restore. If you can give us permission, we come with some support, and then let them give you even the work that the rangers are working with us.
Yeah.
The district local government, same story, and all the other same story. Ministry of Trade had to give us staff from the ministry to come and develop the water and environment cooperatives. And they're excited because they're also reporting on these in their respective ministry reporting. So I think that's the approach. Get to them, let them know the challenge, and then see how to work with them to effect.
That's amazing. Well, with this, only because I'm conscious of time, I will end the Q&A session now. But I also wanted to share that we will have a very short post-webinar networking session very shortly after the Q&A session. So if you would like to get in touch with Felly, please do get in touch with her via her email address, which you can see on the screen. And I'm also sharing that in the chat box. So you have her email address handy. Thank you so much for everyone who attended the webinar. Please stay online for a few more minutes for the post-webinar networking session where we can unmute and discuss the topic further. Felly is also going to be with us online for a few more minutes. But the webinar is officially ended. So thank you so much. And Felly, any final words before some of our participants who want to leave can leave the webinar?
Yeah, thank you so much again, the CSC, for arranging this and giving us opportunity to share our story and a platform to learn from each other. Thank you so much, the participants who have made time again to be part of this. So I'll be around
Yeah. If you go
during
to the next slide,
the
yeah.
networking. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you.